Lifeology is the first section in modern esoteric beyond our senses. Natural history, earth history, and human history with a radical twist. Lifeology is the long and storied alternative narrative on this planet. Lifeology. Quote, all the achievements of mankind have value only to the extent that they preserve and improve the quality of life. The human future depends on our ability to combine the knowledge of science with the wisdom of wildness, said aviator Charles Lindbergh in 1967 Life magazine article. Who are we? Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? What is our true essence, and what is the human connection to other life? Such is the inquiry of lifeology in this chapter and section, also known as the study of all life. This definition is very broad and includes the seen and unseen realms, and it involves study of our long and storied history on this planet. This inquiry is conducted through the lens of the esoteric, where things are not always as they appear, and may be coexisting beyond our senses. Lifeology includes a study of the macro level as well as the micro, or as many great teachers have observed, as above, so below. Life is mercurial and cannot thrive just anywhere. It requires fundamental ingredients to ensure perpetual survivability. On Earth, life needs three conditions to survive. 1. Atoms made up of chemical elements, including carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and 2. Water. And 3. A source of energy, such as sunlight. Nearly all life, from the first single-celled organism on embryonic Earth to the complex creatures of today, is composed of organic materials. Matter is a general term for the substance of which all physical objects are made. Typically, matter includes atoms and other particles which have less mass. Atoms of the four elements carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen combine with traces of other elements to produce the key molecules that make up the building blocks of our cells, the amino acids. Complex molecules of carbon bond with other elements, such as oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. Carbon is also able to bond with all of these because of its 4 valence electrons. Secondly, life on Earth also needs a liquid like water where the organic elements can interact. The third key ingredient for life is a source of energy. Sunlight contributes photosynthesis and other life-giving properties beneficial to most life on this planet. It is often assumed in astrobiology that if life exists somewhere else in the universe, it will also be carbon-based, but this assumption is referred to by critics as carbon chauvinism. Astrobiologists propose that asteroids, meteors, and space dust carry simple life forms and spread them to a host planet upon impact. This dispersion of basic life forms in the universe is called panspermia. It is offered as an alternative to Darwin's theory of evolution, which is still in the working hypothesis stage and has not been absolutely proven. Scientists studying the panspermia possibility point out that all life shares much of the same DNA, and similar genetics occur between humans and plants, as well as between humans and apes. These similarities are evidence of strong connections, but not proof of evolutionary descendancy. Prior to Homo sapiens, The majority of extinctions on Earth occurred naturally, since it is estimated that 99.9% of all species that have existed on Earth are now extinct. In the present day, there are some livestock animal species as well as human beings breeding in abundance, while many others are in decline, and some are on the brink of extinction. Much of the stress on flora and fauna is being impacted by humans, either directly or indirectly, in what today can be called an animal genocide. The United Nations Development Program reported that every year between 18,000 and 55,000 species become extinct. The cause? Human activities. It is clear the manner in which humans currently live on the planet is unbalanced and unsustainable. Even the lives of the majority of humans is out of balance, with an increase in cancer and stress-related illnesses. Species extinctions are at an all-time high, caused by mismanagement of the planet's ecosystems by humans. As stewards of the planet, we have failed the animal kingdom, upset the biological balance, and in the process are failing ourselves. Our blue-green orb. The Earth's atmosphere is a layer of gases surrounding the planet and retained by the gravity of Earth. By content and volume, Earth's atmosphere contains roughly 78.08% nitrogen, 20.95% oxygen, 0.93% argon, and 0.038% carbon dioxide, trace amounts of other gases, and a variable amount, about 1%, of water vapor. This mixture of gases is commonly known as air. The atmosphere protects life on Earth by absorbing ultraviolet solar radiation and reducing temperature extremes between day and night. Earth's atmosphere is constantly charged with electrical discharges, such as lightning. We also perceive these electrical phenomenon as crystalline light pillars of ice and as the aurora borealis northern lights currently being seen in the daytime. Strangely, the atmosphere has become more electrically charged than just a few years ago. There is no definite boundary between Earth's atmosphere and outer space. Our atmosphere is slowly becoming thinner until it will simply fade into space. 3/4 of the atmosphere's mass is within 11 kilometers of the planetary surface. People who travel above an altitude of 80.5 kilometers are designated as astronauts. An altitude of 120 kilometers marks the boundary where atmospheric effects become noticeable during re-entry of spacecrafts. The Kármán line at 100 kilometers is also frequently regarded as the boundary between atmosphere and outer space. Scientific measurements have revealed that the Earth has a measurable pulse, or a heartbeat, in the atmosphere. It is called the Schumann resonance, which pulses between the Earth's surface and the bottom of the ionosphere. It vibrates at approximately 7.8 cycles per second. This rate is right between the alpha and theta brainwave levels for humans, which has been described as a carrier wave for consciousness at rest. This is a state of deep but alert relaxation and intuitive attunement. It is the same rate for horses, dogs, and cats. The Schumann resonance has a wavelength so powerful it circles the Earth in a matter of seconds and passes effortlessly through concrete. To put it all in context, just consider that we are currently residing on a 4.5 billion year old spaceship. It is self-sufficient, organic, and very complex spaceship. We are orbiting a power source that is a million times larger than planet Earth. There are over 200 billion more power sources, quite possibly with habitable planets like our own, within our neighboring group on this side of the galaxy. There are 40 more groups in the singular region of our galaxy. Our neighborhood is moving at 2 million miles per second towards an object that is 150 million light years away. In our Milky Way galaxy alone, there are over 50 billion planets. If even 1% of those are in the system's Goldilocks zones, then there are 500 million planets in our galaxy alone capable of supporting life. In the cosmos, lifeology, the study of all life, takes on many different dimensions. Life on this blue-green orb seems totally precious and rare. The species diversity on Earth is astonishing. For example, there are an estimated to be 10 million to 100 million ant species alone. Astronauts who have left the Earth's atmosphere and gazed upon our planet have almost always come away from the experience with a profound sense of oneness with humanity and all living things. They return with epiphanies such as life changing breakthroughs in the awareness of their personal connection with a greater consciousness in the universe, a clearer perception of their respective life purposes, and an unclouded view of humanity's habitual insanities, such as the utter futility of war. Figure in the superstring physics equation, which describes a universe of at least 11 dimensions, and the mysteries of the cosmos are compounded once again. The final frontier. Space is not a tranquil place. There are constant, massive bursts of energy, and our Milky Way galaxy is continually evolving. Scientists now admit space is full of life, energy waves, and minute particles of dust. Space dust is widely regarded as freeze-dried bacteria. It is almost as if the universe manufactures pre-life in the form of solar dust particles, ready to be unbundled when they arrive on a host planet. This panspermia distribution may also be occurring on lifeless planets, originating in faraway galaxies, and in the process of establishing life everywhere simultaneously. But an entire planet as rich as Earth still seems to us a rare occurrence because life is arbitrary and fickle. The universe is not a dark place, despite all of its mysteries. The spiral arms of galaxies are fragmented and have characteristic spurs or feathers that make up giant molecular clouds, GMCs. Gamma rays were previously associated with the most extreme environments in the universe, like supernovas. Now, scientists believe that about 50 terrestrial gamma ray flashes occur every day on Earth. Everywhere we look, we're seeing X rays and gamma rays flying out of thunderstorms and lightning, said Joseph Doyer, a physicist at the Florida Institute of Technology. He goes on, the gamma rays coming out of thunderstorms are so intense, we can measure these 600 kilometers away, and so bright that it almost blinds those viewing from above the spacecraft. Ultraviolet light is now being considered a healing aid, while infrared light appears ideal in the transmitting of data. Many things we have been taught about the universe are being challenged by esoteric revisionists. For example, the substance of the universe is not matter at all, but motion, an abstract ratio of change that we call space-time. Additionally, faster than light speeds are commonplace, the rule, not the exception, which goes against Einstein's theory of relativity. Astronomers have everything backwards. For example, stars beginning their life as red giants and ending as blue giants exploding in a supernova. There are two types of supernovas, one based on the thermal limit, such as a blue giant explosion, or the age limit, that is, stars of other spectral classes. Galaxies form from globular clusters to irregulars to spirals to giant spheres and also explode, producing quasars. Another revision to popular dogma is that there was no Big Bang, but indeed, with every contraction, there is an expansion. The universe is very much bigger than we can possibly comprehend. There are over 200 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy alone. Plus, there are an estimated 100 billion to a trillion known galaxies in the universe. Our Milky Way galaxy is a barred spiral, and 34% of all galaxies in the universe are spirals. It is estimated that there are more stars in the known universe than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the world combined. Hubble discoveries. Recent discoveries by the Hubble telescope have opened our eyes to a universe not only far more expansive than we ever imagined, but far more intricate and ripe with implications than we can readily process. Trillions of stars equate to billions of possibilities for life, especially within other recent discoveries that illustrate that the majority of stars do indeed harbor their own solar systems with inhabitable planets. Even as recently as the 1920s, orthodox science believed in a static cosmos until Edwin Hubble demonstrated that it was actually expanding and therefore must have originated long ago in some titanic Big Bang. There are now challenges to this widely accepted theory because with every expansion, most logically, there must be a contraction. Today, what all scientists would firmly agree upon is that the universe is outwardly expanding and is of a finite age, born from a dramatic phase transition when the ether, or quantum vacuum, jumped from one energy state to another, sucking matter into physical existence within our universe. We are on the expansion side of the universe, which is what we see from our perspective, while the other side is shrinking. The universe extends far beyond what astronomers currently envision to be its outer limit. In total, there are 6 additional belts which are void of any coarse material beyond the stars, planets, and all matter. Matter itself is in a constant transformation within the material belt and is, therefore, subject to a growth and disintegration process. For this reason, matter can never be or become as old as the complete universe. At any given time, therefore, only young matter can be found in the material universe. As such, matter is a solid and compact state can only be, at best, a mere 40 or 45 billion years old. The age of the entire universe, beyond the material belt, however, is approximately 46 trillion years old. Symmetry may be common in nature, but it usually indicates the presence of some kind of force field or organism. This notion is questioned when we consider the Red Square Nebula. It is one of the most spectacular objects in the universe and reveals almost perfect symmetry. Photographed in infrared, it looks more like a gemstone than a star, albeit on a cosmic scale. The red square is described as resulting from the death agony of a star called MWC 922 that is spewing gas, dust, and plasma all over the region. Explosions, though, are not likely to be symmetrical, certainly not like the small ones we create on Earth, much less when nebula sized. Researchers acknowledge the red square's amazing regularity and realize that some of what we are seeing could be from bands or concentric ripples, representing periodic releases of energy from the central node. The red square is now being labeled as the most symmetrical object of comparable complexity ever photographed. Given the fact that our solar system is on the far fringes of the Milky Way galaxy, our sun is relatively small in linear time. Evolution at the center of the galaxy has had at least a billion years head start, a very long time for a race of extraterrestrial beings to ponder the nature of energy and light. To consider ourselves as the only intelligent life in the universe would be naive and egotistical, and to consider our Earth history free from extraterrestrial influence is globally ethnocentric. Beings from far away, or perhaps right here in another dimension, have had a vested interest in Earth for eons. Our planet is a genetic storehouse of information, which may also be resourceful to another's race's own survival, especially those of a synthetic nature. But this treasure trove of DNA is currently being squeezed out by a single reckless parasite called the human race. Overpopulation. World's population is booming, read a report dated August 30th, 1964, from the UN. Not only is the world population soaring, but the rate of increase is accelerating. The annual increase now amounts to a high 2.1% a year. Midway through 1962, the Earth's population was 3.1 billion people. The annual increase since then is 63 million, more than the population of France each year. Yet the exploding population growth is appearing primarily in developing nations. For Europe, the increase rate is only 0.9%. For North America, 1.6%, while underdeveloped areas show increases of 3 to 5%. At least 20% of the world's population lives in a single country with the most amount of people, Communist China. Most of these trends forecast over 50 years ago continue on the same trajectories now, but the human impact is currently having far wider consequences. Those alive today are witnessing growth on a scale never before seen. The world population reached 3 billion in 1959, with the expected population in 2050 to reach 9 billion. To place the human growth trajectory in perspective, in 1957, it took 33 years for the entire world population to double. In the next 28 years, it doubled again and will again in the next 24 years. In October 2011, the world's population officially hit 7 billion, and this figure would require at least 5 planets to be sustainable. The world's population is at more than 1,400% of its sustainable level, and that is 14 times higher than its optimum capacity. One bumper sticker states, "The greenest action you can take is don't breed." Overpopulation is also the main cause of the Earth's environmental problems, including climate change, habitat degeneration, and species extinctions being among the most troubling. To rebalance, a humane and controlled birth cessation must be implemented to reduce the population to the sustainable level of 1/2 to 1 billion people, and ideally never more than 1 billion. In addition to this problem, humans are living longer than ever before. There is always the possibility of finding one or several Earth-like planets in the universe and dispersing a percentage of the population to new home planets. If not, further privation, criminality, hate against our fellow humans, migrations to mega cities, wars, exploitation of Earth's resources to near depletion, as well as new diseases, epidemic, starvation, and mass suffering will only increase. Population growth is a jagged chart depending on which country is growing or, in some cases, shrinking. 42% of the people in the most developed parts of the world, such as Japan, are at zero or negative population growth and are not reproducing fast enough to keep their numbers even. 40% of the nations are adding new people, with the Far East clocking it at a 1% growth rate. That leaves 18% of the population experiencing rapid growth. Africa and South Asia are the fastest growth regions. They are also among the poorest. Studies show that when women are better educated and have access to reproductive health care, they decide to have smaller families. At least 1 billion people would like to have access to reproductive health services, yet for most, none are available. The population debate is not just about the number of people, but also about the resources required for the ever increasing demand. Currently, 25% of our fellow human beings do not have electricity. 13% have no access to fresh, clean water. 1 in 6 of us will go to sleep tonight malnourished or starving. The struggle for resource equality is amplified by the USA, a nation containing only 5% of the world's population, yet consuming 30% of the world's resources. The United States is offering a very poor model for the rest of the world. The USA also has the dubious distinction of employing half of all the lawyers of the world and spends 50% of all annual military expenditures worldwide. The fact that Earth is grossly overpopulated is the most underreported media story of the last 100 years. Almost 1 billion people are malnourished daily, and with the growth of the population increasing by another billion every 2 decades, starvation is not a problem that is going to go away anytime soon. More people equals a greater demand for resources. But growth is challenged by an energy system that cannot grow adequately in its present limited form. And these dynamics are linked to a natural environment that is rapidly being depleted. The choice seems clear. Either we can undertake voluntary change now or face involuntary change later. Avoiding future disasters. Modern civilization is fragile and can collapse by purely natural forces or by those of our own making. Certainly, a direct hit by a meteorite would be catastrophic to nearly all life on this planet. The worst natural disaster could be a planetary pole shift where the axis of the Earth, including the North and South poles, reconfigure into new locations, prompting the continents to drift, volcanoes to spew, and earthquakes to trigger far more severe consequences than ever known, setting off tsunamis occurring in all the oceans and decimating coastal communities. Life as we know it would be changed forever or would no longer exist. Currently, the 2 magnetic poles are at the weakest they've ever been measured, so this scenario is not so far-fetched. In fact, the magnetic North Pole is moving at the speed of 55 kilometers per year towards Siberia, while the South Pole is moving much slower at only 5 kilometers per year. The geologic record also indicates the poles have shifted on many occasions during the long march of time. Furthermore, likely due to global warming, the loss of Arctic pack ice is estimated at 11% per decade. Far more frightening, if only because it can be prevented, is what we could do to ourselves, and by extension, to practically all life on Earth. Since midway through the 20th century, the prospects of a nuclear war have lingered as a way humans could end the world by the folly of war. Any nuclear attack on the USA would result in retaliation, followed by a domino effect of wars, including biological attacks, leading the planet into an environmental catastrophe. Even without a high-tech war, it appears our planet remains in serious peril. If even a few ecosystems collapse, there still may be a domino effect. A natural disaster may be imminent, considering that in 1950, 1/4 of the land surface of the Earth was forested. Today, it is closer to 1/6, and the oceans cannot soak up all of the excess atmospheric carbon dioxide humans have produced. Lack of primary rainforests will lead to the planet's inability to create oxygen and a reducing in biodiversity. A polluted and degraded atmosphere contributes to depleted and acidic oceans. Removal of trees and shrubs lead to deforestation. Overfarmed and drought-stricken lands will continue to create more severe storms. Polar caps and mountain glaciers melting from global warming will lead to rising sea levels and chaos along coastal communities. An increase in severe droughts and flooding will lead to more intense hurricanes and tornadoes. A domino effect of several or all of these scenarios could lead to a series of, quote, world storms that ultimately could collapse our entire civilization. Even if the planet remains stable, there will be storms with increasing intensity and very unusual weather patterns on all parts of Earth as the decades progress. Our poisoned planet will slowly diminish humans' reproductive abilities, with more babies born deformed and an increased number of children diagnosed with autism. It can be argued that everything we currently eat, drink, and breathe is polluted. Factory-raised animals are sick and are developing exotic diseases. Worldwide fish stocks are grossly depleted by overfishing, and this then breaks down the entire oceanic food chain. Human-made medicines are not as effective as they were previously. There are new exotic diseases, plagues, viruses, and parasites emerging around the world. A toxic planet can no longer sustain 7 billion irresponsibly breeding humans. Homo sapiens are the masters of the planet and must learn to live sustainably, no matter how difficult the transition may be, or else we will suffer dire consequences. If we cannot control our numbers and respect the planet, humans will be the ultimate victims of our own folly. This dying planet. Before we can advance as a species, we must deal with the pressing issues of saving the precarious balance of life on the planet on which we all depend. Ocean life is now at risk for the worst extinction event in millions of years, completely as a result of human activity. The oceans are in dire straits from a combination of air and water pollution, runoff from land fertilizers, disastrous overfishing, and global climate change is threatening to destroy entire marine ecosystems. The world's leading experts of oceanography are surprised by the rate and magnitude of the ocean changes that they are witnessing. This is a very serious situation demanding unequivocal action at every level. The implications of what humankind is doing to the ocean and its cumulative effects are far worse than any scientist had imagined. The Arctic ice cap has nearly disappeared during the summer months, and this fact alone proves that global warming is real. Arctic polar bears are drowning in record numbers for lack of summer sea ice and are expected to be extinct before the end of this century. Special interests, mostly hired by oil companies, continue to muddle the global warming debate with false or misleading information. Humans are all in the same boat, but we are paddling in different directions. We need consensus action to save the oceans. There are no valid historical records of the volume and type of materials that were spilled in the oceans for centuries before the establishment of anti dumping laws in the 1960s and 1970s. When the first studies came out in 1968, it was estimated that 38 million tons of excavated material, that is 4.5 million tons of industrial waste, 4.5 million sewage sludge, 100 million tons of petroleum based products, mainly plastic, from 2 to 4 tons of chemical waste, and more than 1 million tons of heavy metals were released into the ocean. The U.S. Archive shows that between 1946 and 1970, over 55,000 containers of radioactive waste were disposed of in 3 dumping sites in the Pacific Ocean. In addition, 34,000 tons of radioactive waste were disposed of in 3 sites of dumping on the U.S. East Coast between 1951 and 1962. No law on dumping radioactive waste was put into effect before 1972. With such a toxic marine environment, it is no longer safe to consume seafood on a regular basis. The 4 reasons why we must stop eating seafood are high levels of mercury, Fukushima radiation spanning across the North Pacific Basin, species endangerment, and the accumulation of toxic substances from over a century of reckless dumping. Ours may very well be the last generation of seafood consumers. The last mass extinction event was 65 million years ago, yet humans are now producing our own mass extinction level, possibly within a few short decades. As an example, despite the tiny country of Laos being known as the land of 100,000 elephants only 100 years ago, today there are less than 34,000 Asian elephants worldwide. Concurrently, the negative trajectory of animal genocide runs opposite the explosion of human proliferation. The silence of the bees. The disappearance of honeybees is one of the most disturbing of species declines, especially for humans. Bees are a keystone species that is absolutely vital to sustaining our ecosystem. About 10 years ago, honeybees began to mysteriously disappear across the planet, literally vanishing from their hives with no trace or carcasses. Dubbed colony collapse disorder, or CCD, the CCD continues to accelerate across North America, and the trend only seems to be getting worse. What happened? Where could the bees have gone? Scientists are baffled. Environmental scientists immediately suspected that the cause, in part, was chemical pesticides, quite possibly worsened by the pollen emitted from GMO crops. Of course, the chemical industry is engaged in a full-blown cover-up to deny this likely possibility, while the pollinators of our world suffer a devastating population collapse. Bee whisperers, or their equivalent, have suggested that the bees are on strike and have just left this dimension. Only a study of the esoteric could even float such a theory. The point is that there is consciousness in the animal kingdom, and experts still do not agree on definitive answers. But the cessation of harmful pesticides is an obvious step in the right direction. If by some far out chance bees are on strike, logically they'll return when their environment improves. Once all the honeybees are gone, though, we are really going to feel the impact of our neglect. Commercial honeybee operations pollinate crops that provide 1 out of every 3 bites of food in our diets. Almost all fruits and nuts are pollinated by honeybees. Could CCD be a fungus, a mold, or a virus? What are the pathogens in bees? New viruses keep emerging, but they take years to identify. Of course, new science and new researchers are entering the race to save the honeybees. They have identified several factors being at play in this perfect storm: nutrition, pesticides, viruses, and pathogens. As of today, there is no way to remedy CCD. According to the minutes of a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in May 2013 in Russia, there is extreme outrage over the former Obama administration's continued protection of global seed and plant genetic giants Syngenta and Monsanto, especially in the face of a growing bee apocalypse that the Kremlin warns will most certainly lead to world war. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of the Russian Federation, MNRE, released a report through the Kremlin stating, as part of a study on impacts from the world's most widely used class of insecticides, nicotine-like chemicals called neonicotinoids, American Bird Conservancy, the ABC, has called for a ban on their use as seed treatments and for suspension of all applications pending an independent review of the product's effects on birds, terrestrial and aquatic invertebrates, and other wildlife. Important to note, this report states that Syngenta, along with biotechs Monsanto, Bayer, Dow, and DuPont, now control about 99% of the global market for genetically modified pesticides, plants, and seeds. Vladimir Putin was so incensed over the Obama regime's refusal to discuss this grave matter that for 3 hours he refused to even meet with John Kerry, who had traveled to Moscow on a scheduled diplomatic mission. Putin then relented so as not to cause an even greater rift between the two nations. At the center of this dispute between Russia and the USA, this MNRE report says, is the undisputed evidence that a class of neuroactive insecticides chemically related to nicotine, known as neonicotinoids, are destroying our planet's bee population, which, if left unchecked, could destroy our world's ability to grow enough food to feed our population. Planet garbage patch. Many people do not realize there is a swirling mass of plastic and garbage particles developing in the world's oceans. The widest and deepest is in the North Pacific Ocean Gyre, which qualifies as the planet's largest garbage dump. Recent research sponsored by the National Science Foundation suggests that the affected area may now be twice the size of Hawaii. The Five Gyres Project estimated that there is 143 billion kilograms of plastic in the oceans right now. According to a recent PBS show featuring the Gyres dilemma, there are now more items of trash than individual fish life in the world's oceans. A gyre in oceanography is any large system of rotating ocean currents, particularly those involved with large wind movements. Gyres are caused by the Coriolis effect, that is, planetary vortices along with horizontal and vertical friction that determine their circulation patterns from the wind currents. And it is also where the garbage accumulates. Most of the garbage deposited into the oceans is flowing out of polluted rivers. All five of the major ocean gyres are now massive garbage patches, some as large as the state of Texas, extending many hundreds of meters deep down into the ocean. Plastic does not break down very rapidly and is the main ingredient in the garbage patch gyres. To further compound the problems, after the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami in northern Japan, several impacted Fukushima nuclear reactors began to emit radioactive particles into the soil, air, and water, and there have been other unexpected impacts. The first debris swept into the sea by the tsunami reportedly started to wash ashore on the North American West Coast by mid December of 2011, a year earlier than scientists and authorities had predicted. Residents of Vancouver Island, Alaska, and the U.S. Pacific Coast have said they found large quantities of bottles, cans, lumber, and floats. The debris is part of 18 billion kilograms of debris from Japan that is floating across the Pacific, taking up an area thought to be the size of Alaska. The impact of the debris and radioactivity on the Pacific Ocean ecosystems remains unclear. But in 2013, tuna were detected with radioactivity off the North American coast, and the first cases of sea mammals perishing from thyroid conditions began to emerge. Much of the Fukushima debris is expected to eventually join an already massive patch of existing garbage floating in the North American gyre. According to the Pesticides Action Network North America, more than 1 billion pounds of pesticides are used annually in the United States alone, and the EPA has registered more than 18,000 different pesticides in use. Many of these pesticides have a long-term effect, as the chemicals take a long time to break down, lasting for decades or longer, long after all the pests that were intended to be killed. Extensive scientific studies show widespread and pervasive pesticide contamination in groundwater, drinking water, and wildlife habitats throughout the USA. Oceans also soak up 30% more carbon dioxide than land does, thus becoming acidified more rapidly. The rising global temperature and chemical composition of the tropical oceans is threatening to kill off over 15,000 species of smaller feeder fish because of bleached and depleted coral life. Coral reefs are the most biologically diverse ecosystems in the oceans. In just the last 20 years, 44% of all coral reefs worldwide have perished. Some areas, like the Florida Keys, have seen 80% of the coral life depleted, and the future seems even more bleak. The end result of largely unregulated overfishing in the last century is that 90% of all commercial fish stocks are now gone from the oceans. We must immediately find ways to nurture rather than destroy this delicate world. Immediate, humane reductions in human breeding must be implemented to ultimately save future generations. And now is the time for a worldwide ban on wild animal hunting and drift net fish harvesting. Thinking in terms of karma and the cycle of cause and effect of what we have done, the human race seems to deserve an apocalypse of the doom and gloom variety. People need to realize that everything is connected, including all life and even our connection with external life in the universe. We are consuming Earth into its collapse and leaving behind enormous chaos. Humans have literally overrun every corner of the planet. It is time we turn around our destructive behavior and learn to respect the diversity of life on Earth. We need to love the animals of the planet and not view them as a nuisance or a commodity for harvest. If we can view animals as co-inhabitors and celebrate the diversity they represent, maybe we can revise some of our horribly destructive habits. Smartest land animals. Animals express consciousness through instinct. Humans, in addition to instinct, possess the highest quality of consciousness, that is, self awareness. The magpie is only one bird that shows signs of self awareness. Reflective thought is expanded self awareness, and it is the biggest difference between animals and humans. Reflection is the power to turn one's consciousness upon oneself, to know, and especially to know that one knows. Learning math or physics and understanding philosophy or astronomy is due to humans' unique ability to reflect inwardly. Only 3 animal species are known to create tools besides humans. They are elephants, monkeys, and New Caledonia crows. All 3 of these advanced creatures show development of cognition throughout their lives. It is known that all 3 species have a way to communicate with their own kind. Crows can remember human faces, for example, or a farmer's field where another crow was shot, or, or where falcons have attacked. Crows can remember those locations for up to 2 years and can somehow relay this information to their own kind. Crows have been known to take wire hangers and craft them as nesting materials. Sometimes, as observed in Japan, the crows use wire hangers on electrical power lines, which cause energy outages. Crows have been called feathered apes because their body to brain weight is about the same ratio as primates. There are 250 known crow words, and nearly as many have been identified in elephants and chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are our closest relative in the animal kingdom, and they can teach us a lot about ourselves. When chimps have the option to share the spoils of newly found food, they never share among themselves. They just grab what they can, regardless of who did what. They don't seem to keep track of who is on the team. Researchers believe that the share the spoils response emerged at some point in the last 500,000 years as hominoids began to forage and hunt cooperatively. Those who have the share response could develop stable, ongoing partnerships. Humanoids discovered that working together in small teams accomplished far more than individuals could accomplish on their own. Wild chimps capable of making tools share over 98% of their genes with humans. Chimps can catch human infectious diseases, probe for termites with sticks as tools, and have complex social structures. Like us, chimps have a dark side, can be cruel and brutal, and are known to kill other chimp tribe members. Poaching and loss of habitat have made chimps endangered due to an ever increasing environment because of human encroachment and poaching. 50 years ago in Tanzania, there were 1 million chimps. Now only 300,000 remain. Monkeys are clever enough to experiment and wise enough to remember. Monkeys are known to be multilingual when multiple species of primates join as one troop. They warn of predators and announce food sources. Each primate species makes a different vocalization, but they are somehow able to understand each other. There are over 120 known words among the 8 or so monkey species. Costa Rican monkeys have many words among their species. They have learned behaviors such as swimming underwater to collect lily pad roots or washing their root foods. They also use deception in their vocalizations to scare off their brethren from non-existent enemy so they can collect an item of food without competition. Similar to humans, some monkey species can be murderous. Baboons are the most aggressive of the primates and are known to hunt other primates. Humans are competitive and social just like monkeys. We both use tools to collect food, and monkeys use sticks to capture insects and rocks to smash open nuts. Are aquatic twins. An animal's ability to communicate among its own is a measurement of a species' intelligence. Dolphin behavior has been studied extensively by humans, both in capacity and in the wild. We know dolphins and whales have a complex underwater language and a societal structure similar to people. Dolphins speak with high pitched whistles. They have identifiable family names for each other. Dolphin whistles can travel a much greater distance underwater than sound does in the air. Packs of males form gangs with their own vocalization whistles. Researchers think it is a way to attract female mates. Rival male gangs taunt and intimidate other male groupings, but do not use violence. A dolphin mother and her calves will stay in close contact for 5 years. Imaginative, curious, experimental, playful, and flexible behavior traits are all described as hallmarks of dolphin intelligence. Humans show a remarkable intelligence connection with dolphins and whales. Killer whales, similar to early man, form social groups and work together to hunt humpback whales. Similarly, different whale species work together to herd schools of fish for collective feasting. Hunting is a learned technique taught by parents, a kind of creative intelligence not found frequently in the animal kingdom. Sometimes clever dolphins will hover over a stingray, waiting for it to flush out an octopus. When the prey is exposed, the dolphin will swoop in quickly and catch the prize fish. This is proof of creative intelligence. Dolphins routinely display self awareness when looking in an aquarium mirror. Dolphins also display empathy and will show willingness to befriend humans when not threatened. Emotional awareness can be identified by spindle cells in their brains, and dolphin brains are wired similar to humans. Echolocation allows both whales and dolphins to detect prey. Sperm whales are the largest toothed predators on Earth who can locate giant squid at the bottom of the ocean with echolocation. Squid and sperm whales engage in epic battles of survival, where the squid can actually win if it can drown the whale, but this is highly unusual. Sperm whales can store vast quantities of oxygen in their bloodstream, and this allows them to dive incredibly deep, over 3,000 meters, and stay underwater for over an hour. Their only natural enemy is the pilot whale, which is only one third their size, but have an advantage because they hunt in packs. Similarly, humpback whales work together herding and catching schools of herring fish, and killer whales work together to hunt the calves of humpback whales. The closest living relative of whales is thought to be the hippopotamus. The humpbacks have been observed to form friendships that last for many years. They also grieve for their dead. Dolphins are often regarded as one of Earth's most intelligent animals, although it is difficult to say just how intelligent dolphins are. Comparison of species' relative intelligence are complicated by differences in sensory apparatus, response modes, and the very nature of cognition. Furthermore, the difficulty and expense of doing experimental work with large aquatic mammals means that some tests that could yield meaningful results still have not been carried out, or have been carried out with inadequate sample size and methodology. Dolphins have long played a mythical role in human culture. They are commonly depicted in Greek mythology, from mosaic portraits to coin designs, including one depicting a man or boy riding on the back of a dolphin. Ancient Greek mariners treated them with welcome delight. A ship spotting dolphins riding in the wake was considered a good omen for a smooth voyage. Dolphins were also important to the Minoans, as judged by artistic evidence from the ruined palace at Knossos. In Hindu mythology, the Ganges River dolphin is associated with Ganga, the deity of the Ganges River. There are also countless stories of dolphins saving humans from drowning or escorting a shipwrecked sailor to safety. The botany of desire. Beyond the fauna of Earth, humans also have a deep connection with the flora. After all, each species is within the web of nature. Attempting to stand outside of it is not healthy. In our current world, which is already out of balance, we are now faced with genetically modified organisms in our food supply. Long before the advent of GMOs, farmers around the world had been organically crossbreeding crops to make them stronger and more bountiful. For example, apples originated in Central Asia, but now they're grown and used worldwide in so many different ways. Growers want even more sweetness, and apples are portable and offer long-lasting freshness and taste. The Kazakhstan origin of apples gave us many varieties. Grafting, the practice of attaching a favored seed onto a new plant, continues to provide new genetic strains. Monoculture of a single variety strips a species of the chance to survive and intermingle because they're all the same. Bugs stay way ahead of the game. As millions per farm are eradicated with chemicals, they evolve immunities to chemical pesticides. Genetic manipulation provides a tool chest to alter DNA and enhance or preserve apple trees. But we must be careful. Sex creates variety. Sexual breeding experiments can offer various strains, despite the life providing asset of furnishing oxygen. Trees and plants are being destroyed at an alarming rate to provide open land for growing crops or grazing animals, which humans select. Flowers, for example, are a multi-million-dollar industry. This is extraordinary for a plant that is otherwise worthless as a food source. There is another plant that has an unusual quality, one that can alter human consciousness. Marijuana can unlock the mind and give the user an experience of a new realm of consciousness. The resin of female cannabis plants is the psychoactive element of marijuana. Other natural or synthetic drugs can provide a method of mind expansion. Pot was first discovered in India and China and was used thousands of years ago as a therapeutic pain reliever. Cannabis is a tropical plant, but it can be grown by farmers in a variety of locations. Now it is grown indoors as much as outdoors, and growth can be manipulated using artificial heat, regulated lighting, a steady water supply, and the use of fans to circulate air in the manufactured natural environment. But marijuana is merely a weed, yet in the open market it can sell for thousands of dollars per kilogram. Music is now used as a tool to help plants grow to their fullest potential. Joel Sternheimer, a French physicist and musician, writes melodies that allegedly helps plants grow and has applied for international patents protecting his methods of music making. The tunes he applies are not random melodies. Instead, he chooses each note to correspond to an amino acid in a protein, and the full tune corresponds to an entire protein. Sternheimer claims that when plants hear the appropriate tune, they produce more of that protein. He also writes tunes that inhibit the synthesis of proteins. Using simple physics, he claims to be able to translate these into audible vibrations of music. The quantum vibrations that occur at the molecular level as a protein are being assembled from its constituent amino acids. Sternheimer claims that tomatoes exposed to his tunes grew 2.5 times larger than the same seeds in a control study. He also claims to have stopped a mosaic virus infection of the tomatoes by playing tunes that inhabited enzymes vital to the virus. The tunes are very short, he says, and need only be played once. Steinheimer warns scoffers to be heedful when tinkering with his tunes because they can affect people as well. Don't ask a musician to play them, he cautions. You must be very careful. Steinheimer says that one of his musicians had difficulty breathing after playing the tune for Psychochrome C too often. It's also known that people sing to their plants and they report that they grow better and healthier as a result. Earth in the balance. Humans are the dispensers and recipients of the karma we create in the world. Life is not static. It will go on with or without humans. Life is eternally dynamic, forcing, forever creating, and pushing forward. We are all eternal beings, continuously on the pathway of endless unfoldment, always evolving just a little bit more each time around, both physically and spiritually. We are never less, but always more. We are not asleep and unconscious, but alive, awake, and aware. We are all very much accountable for our actions, so we very much should listen to our higher selves. There is something within each of us that sings the praises of eternity. Listen to the song within yourself. Tread lightly and have a minimal impact. Humans have been blessed and cursed with a fertile imagination, often viewing ourselves as separate from the animal kingdom. Where animals rely on instinct, humans rely on feelings and intellect. Our mastery of the physical world makes our role as stewards of the planet even more apparent. For better or for worse, humans are assigned to the top species today and largely responsible for the preservation of most living organisms. The fragility of life and the awesome power of nature coexist in a very precarious balance. Humans must increase their sensitivity and cooperation with the natural world. All life is interrelated, no matter how remotely. We are just one animal connected to another, one part of the other, in a complex web of interdependence. Buddhism and Hinduism teach reincarnation, both within the animal kingdom and with people. Contained within this construct, animal spirits will one day evolve spiritually to incarnate as humans. All people once lived as animals according to certain esoteric traditions, and perceptions are now changing to reflect this understanding. In December 2012, an international group of prominent scientists signed the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness, proclaiming support for the concept that animals are conscious and aware to a similar degree as humans. Their list of conscious animals includes all mammals, birds, and some encephalopods like the octopus, which have exhibited the capacity for remembering. In the end, egalitarianism for all life must reign over capitalism. A world treaty must be created where all humans and animals are granted equal rights, including the practical sharing of resources. Hoarding of anything must become a crime. With this model, all living creatures are granted equal rights simply to exist. Even the planet Earth itself has rights. In such a world treaty, abuse of the Earth will be a serious crime to be tried in a world court. Article 3 of the UN Human Rights Declaration already reads, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. The UN should also pass a Declaration of Rights for all living forms of life on Earth. Someday it will be obvious to people that life is interconnected, and it may come first from the quantum activists. After all, if we are made of atoms, then a scientist studying atoms is essentially a group of atoms studying themselves.